Front Desk, Chapter 51. I hopped and skipped over to the Topaz Inn the next afternoon to tell the security guard the good news. "You can rip up that ridiculous list of yours," I told him, but he just shrugged. "Better safe than sorry," he said. "But I just told you, Hank didn't do it, neither did Mrs. Robinson or any of the other black customers. Mr. Lorenz did it. He's the one you should put on your list." No matter what I said, though, the crazy security guard refused to get rid of his list. He kept saying, "It's a free country. I can do whatever I want." I wanted to shake him and say, "You're not getting it. That's not what free means. Free means innocent until proven guilty, not guilty no matter how innocent." I stormed back to the Cala Vista. Hank was in the parking lot chatting with some customers. As soon as he saw my face, he asked, "What's wrong?" He followed me inside the front office, and I told him what happened. "What do we do?" I asked him. Hank didn't say anything for a long time. Then he reached across the front desk and grabbed a blank piece of paper. "Do what you do best," he said, putting the paper in front of me. "Will you help me?" I asked Hank. Hank nodded. "Sure," he said. That afternoon, we worked together on the letter. I wrote most of it, but Hank helped me with certain key words, like discriminatory, a word I did not know before. "Dear Stores, I know that the security guard from the Topaz Inn gave you a list of bad customers, but it is not actually a list of bad customers. It is a list of black customers. He put them on the list because he seems to think that all black customers are bad, but that's 1, not true, and 2, incredibly discriminatory. I mean, it is not true because my good friend is black and he is one of the kindest people I know. Also, I just solved a case involving a stolen car, and guess what? The thief was not black. Actually, he wasn't even a thief. He was the owner. That just goes to show you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. So I'm asking you to please tear up the list. Let's treat all our customers with kindness and respect and not judge anyone by the color of their skin. If you have any questions, please call me at 555-281-0482. Sincerely, Mia Tang, Assistant Manager, Cala Vista Motel. I was very proud of our little letter, and so was Hank. Hank said I hit the issue on the nose, which made me smile. I wrote out 10 copies of the letter by hand and went door to door to all the shops on our street. At most stores, the person inside barely looked at my letter and just put it aside, saying they'd read it later. But then, back at the motel, my phone started ringing. First, the man from the liquor store called up. "Darn right you shouldn't judge a customer by the way they look. I mean, heck, if I judged all my customers by the way they looked, I'd be out of business. Half my customers can't even walk straight," he said. I ticked yes next to liquor store in my notebook. The guy at the convenience store on our street called up next. His voice shook as he spoke. "I came over from the Philippines 7 years ago," said Mr. Abion. "I'd forgotten what it's like to be judged. I'm ripping the list up right now." That was a yes for the convenience store. The laundromat called up next. "I never use this silly list anyway. Clothes are clothes. Doesn't matter to me who they're on," said Mr. Bhagawati. Yes for laundromat. 8 yeses later, I was just down to the other 2 motels, Lagoon Motel and Topaz Inn. I knew Topaz Inn was out, but Lagoon Motel I still had a shot at. I grabbed my letter and headed over there again. The manager was an old guy with a raspy voice. He frowned when he saw me. "What do you want?" he asked. "Did you read my letter?" I asked. "Yes, I read your letter," he said. "And?" "I don't know," he said. "Don't get me wrong, kid. I get where you're coming from. But you and I both know that every time we push that buzzer, we are judging someone based on the way they look. I mean, it's not like we're judging them based on their personality or how they eat a fig. We are making a quick 10-second decision based on what they look like," he said. "But that's different," I said. "How is it different?" "It's not based on their skin color," I said. "It's based on other things, like, are they walking funny, which probably means they're drunk? Are they pounding on the front door, or are they knocking politely? Yeah, but if you think about it, I could tell he was one of those people who just loved to argue, and we were going to be there all day, so I decided to cut to the chase. Look, I've got 7 shops who've agreed to not follow the list. plus us. If you join us, great. If you don't join us, I'm going to write a letter to the mayor's office. Gosh darn it, kid, he harumphed, throwing his arms up. You and your letters. Are you in or are you out? I asked him firmly. There was a long pause. Fine, I'm in, he finally said. In the end, even the Topaz Inn caved too. I told our towel and sheet supplier, who had happened to be their supplier and was African American. Once he heard about the list, he marched over to the Topaz Inn and threw a fit, threatening to stop selling them supplies unless they cut it out. Without a supplier for their towels and bedding, the Topaz Inn could not operate their business. So they had no choice but to get rid of their lists. They apologized and blamed it all on their security guard, whom they promptly fired. As the security guard crawled by a day after the Topaz let him go, he hollered at me, "You happy now? You cost me my job, kid." I shook my head at him. From the way he was walking, I could tell he'd been drinking. We Chinese are supposed to watch out for each other, not if you're being racist. My life's ruined because of you. I turned my back to him, but that just made him more mad. Hey, I'm talking to you. Yeah, you. You're sitting there in your nice air-conditioned office. You think it's all fun and games, don't you? Well, guess what, he slurred. It's not. You have no idea what it's like for the rest of us. You don't know what it's like to be fired, to have no money and nowhere to go. That did it. You have no idea what I know, I yelled back at him. I've been getting fired since before you could read. I could write a book on what it's like to have no money. You know what else I know? That's no excuse to treat other people like dirt. The security guard walked away without another word. Chapter 52. There's a saying in Chinese that goes, never forget how much rice you eat. It's a reminder to stay humble, to stay real. Just because you have an important job doesn't mean you're better than everybody else. You still eat rice like the rest of us. Well, that security guard, he definitely forgot. He let the power of his position go straight to his head and he used it to do horrible things. I wondered if that's what happened to Uncle Zhang's boss, too, when he took away everybody's passports. At the thought of Uncle Zhang, I felt the stirrings of hope. Did he give the letter to his boss yet? Uncle Zhang called us from a payphone 2 days later. You'll never believe it, he said into the phone. The letter worked. I'm free. He told us that when he showed his employer my letter, the guy freaked out. He couldn't believe that Uncle Zhang had found an attorney, or at least someone who was able to write good enough English to help him. He got really scared and immediately gave Uncle Zhang back his papers. Not only that, he gave all the other workers back their papers too. It was the most incredible feeling ever, knowing that something I wrote actually changed someone's life. As my mom and dad and I cheered and congratulated Uncle Zhang, my eyes slid to the closet where the printout of the essay contest lay. Maybe, just maybe, I could change our lives too. Okay, kids, get your pencils out, Mrs. Douglas said in class. We're writing a story again. This time I want you to write about a small moment in your life. A small moment. You mean like a moment that didn't really mean anything? Someone asked. Quite the contrary. A moment that meant everything, Mrs. Douglas said. Think of a time when you were ecstatic or terrified and really zoom in so we know exactly what it felt like. I stared down at the piece of paper in front of me. My head was like a train station. So many stories buzzed in and out. I thought about all the things that happened these last few months, all the miracles and heartbreaks. A chorus of voices flooded into me. Some days my body was completely inside the dumpster, and all you saw were those 2 little legs kicking out in the air, Uncle Lee said. I kneeled before them, holding their hands as they talked about their Chinese maids and how don't they all steal, Aunt Ling said. I don't know why she slapped me. All I said to her was, "Hey, baby," said Uncle Feng. When people look at you, they see a nice, sweet Chinese girl. When they look at me, do you know what they see? A criminal, Hank said. I borrowed the money so she could die knowing her only son was okay out there, that I had made it in America, Uncle Zhang cried. Even if you're American, you'll still be my sister. You'll always be my sister, wherever you are. It was this last voice, Shen's voice, that begged, Let me out. I wriggled, hoping the feeling would pass. I didn't know how I felt about Mrs. Douglas knowing that much about me. And yet, I couldn't stop thinking about it. That snowy day in Beijing, how hard it was to step on the plane, how the first thing we did when we arrived was take a shower. I'd never seen a shower before, a private shower, not like those group ones in the bathhouses in China. In China, there was a bathhouse in every neighborhood and everyone went. Sometimes I'd even see my teacher there. There was awkward, and then there was taking a shower next to your teacher awkward. Those days are over. Here we have showers, my dad's friend had bragged when he picked us up from the airport and took us to his apartment. And you can even open your mouth in the shower and drink the water too. It's clean here. You don't have to boil it. That first day, I stood in the shower for almost an hour with my mouth open, drenched in bliss, gulping down the deliciousness as the water rained down on me. Afterward, when I looked in the mirror, the guilt itched my eyes. Had I just traded my cousin for a shower, I wondered? The words gushed out of me. I remembered what Lupe once said when drawing, how it was all in the detail. I closed my eyes and tried to recall every color, sound, and smell. I wrote in such a trance, nearly jumping in my seat when 20 minutes later Mrs. Douglas declared there were only 2 minutes left. I looked down at my river of words. Then I glanced over at Jason next to me. Panic seized me. His words were so open and exposed. The words were so open and exposed. My story looked like a belly button. I immediately wanted to cover it. Then I remembered something. The itching and wiggling, like a spider was crawling underneath my skin. I'd seen it somewhere before. Where had I seen it? Oh, yes, I remember. It was on Uncle Zhang's face when he told us he was a modern slave. It was on Hank's face when he finally opened up to me about why nobody wanted to hire him. And look what happened. Their lives changed. If I wanted my life to change, I too needed to get past the itchy, wiggly feeling. Okay, guys, Mrs. Douglas said, who's finished? I took a deep breath and raised my hand.